Hello everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. Today it's Chicken Church construction time. So Kelly and Cam are going to help me out and we're going to lay out the rafters today. That's the plan, is get our rafters laid out, get them in place, get our purlins in, even with some lookouts, so we can have that nice sexy overhang, determined fascia, all that type of stuff, because we want this to look really nice. So come along. So if you've been following our series here, you know that I laid out the Chicken Church in SketchUp, and that's what I'm using as a guide. And so Kelly and I are here just debating the height of the roof. In SketchUp, we like the way it looks, but is it too much material to go as high as we need to go? It actually will be 105 inches to the peak from the center of the floor. So after laying that out and looking, we think, no, we want to do that. Even though it's going to take more material and longer rafters and more metal roofing, we like the look that's going to have. It's going to allow this big noggin to pass through there without having to duck all the time, and it's just going to look more church-like, I think. So that's the direction we're going. So with that in mind, we're going to do a ridge beam. My original design didn't include a ridge beam since it was such a small building, but I'm going to go ahead and do it because hey, it just feels better. But we're going to put some temporary. You can see I didn't build these walls to handle vertical support posts for a ridge beam, but we're going to end up taking those out anyway. So we're going to just put temporary verticals to support the ridge beam and start putting the rafters in place. I know in a small building like this, you could actually cut your rafters and attach them to your sill plate first and then drop your ridge beam after, but we're going to do it the way we do it when I built the barn and all the other things. We're going to go ahead and make some verticals, set our ridge beam, and then start putting rafters in place.
Safety.
Push this at the same time?
At the same time.
Like this is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
You want me to measure it, make a mark? Give me your pencil. Do you want it? It doesn't have to be precise.
Right? Just eyeball it. All right, so we got our temporary ridge beam supports in place there. Again, those are going to come out, but that's going to allow us to hold this beam. This beam hadn't dried out very good. It seems like it's rained only 85 inches since I milled it, so it's pretty stout. So we've got a 12-foot long true 2x6 that we're going to cut down because this is a 10-foot long building. I want 6 inches overhang on both sides, so we'll go with 11 feet with that 6-inch overhang. Kelly squared up one end already, but we're going to cut our length, and the three of us are going to try to lift this turkey in place. We need to identify crown if there is one, Kimma. So if there's a crown, you like it for board this way, goes like that, then we want that up because things will settle over time. Does it look like it's got a crown in it at all?
No,
yeah. A little bit of a warp that goes this way, but I think we'll treat this as the top. All right, so you're going to grab that end. We're going to walk down. I'm going to climb up the ladder and put it in place. What you need to do is we'll actually pass it back this way a bit so you can get it on the outside of the door frame. And the plan will be for you to set it up on top of the door frame, and then I'll move the ladder over and put it up in its position. Okay? Fantastic. Let me left it on the ground. And set it up on that door frame if you would. There you go. All right, so because my vertical supports are so flimsy, I marked my 6-inch overhang on my ridge beam and I'll line them up that way because there's a lot of that going on. When we go to put the first rafter in place, obviously that should suck it all in. All right, so for laying out our rafters, right here I've got my first board, which is a true 2x6, is what we're using for rafters. And normally in building a chicken coop or cobbling something together here, you just kind of throw something up, get an idea, run it out. But I want to re-hone my skills. It's been a long time since I've built something that wasn't just a kind of a roughshod building here on the farm. And I want to re-hone my skills and what I'd learned years ago with my father and my uncle and those type of things as to how to properly lay out rafters. So I have to confess, I actually went back to YouTube to watch some videos to make sure I remembered how to do it. So what we looked at is we know with the building, the way I designed it in SketchUp, I know my run and I know my rise because it was something I designed. So that's what I wanted to try to mimic, and that's why we got the ridge beam as high as we do. So that's 54.5 inches high in a 48-inch run, which a run is just, of course, half the width, a span of the building. So I know those two sides, and of course using algebra. See, Cameron, told you have to use, that's geometry actually, isn't it? It's not. Is that algebra and geometry when you use a Pythagorean theorem?
We use it in algebra.
Yeah. So it's algebra and visualized through geometry. There you go, kids. So you never use geometry again in your life. So determining that my slope, or my hypotenuse, if you will, is 72.62, so roughly 72 5/8 inches is our slope. So taking all that in consideration, we did the math to figure out my unit rise, which the unit rise is for every 12 inches we move over in run, how many inches up do we go in rise to make that angle? Using the rise-run equation, we determined that 13 5/8 is our rise compared to our run. So for every 12 inches we come over, we're going to go up 13 5/8, which is a really heavy. That's over a 12 over 12. That's more than 12 over 12. So that's a pretty steep roof, but is what it is. So 13 5/8 is what we're going to do. So using our speed square, we know, come over here, Kimlin, and let's show the people. So if we're using our common scale on our speed square, and we start here at the top of our rafter, and we pivot all the way, because I'm going to go, here's 12, here's 13, so 13 5/8. I don't have that much detail in my speed square. Most don't. We're going to go about right there, and that's where I've drawn that line. So this should be the cut that will fit to the face of the ridge beam. And then I came down my hypotenuse length of 72 5/8 and did the same thing. So I matched that 13 degrees, or that 13 5/8 on the common scale. Where'd you go? Yep, 13 5/8, and drew the line. So this should be, I'm not going to cut the rafter there, because that would then give me no overhang. But it does allow me to mark my bird's mouth. So I'm coming over, normally you come over the width of your sill plate, but if I come over to my true 2x4s, it just doesn't leave me much material there. So I'd like to have a little bit more material. So I'm going to do a 3. And so we'll cut out this, so that goes away. Use the sharp end of the pencil, it helps. So that goes away. But now we need to determine the amount of overhang, and I'd like to have, I think, 8 inches of overhang. So if I make a mark at 8 inches, and then I just want to duplicate at that mark, that same 13 and 5/8 on common. 13, 5/8. Break my line. And then, so this is where I'm going to cut the rafter off. And then I don't want that big of a fascia because that requires a really big fascia board. So we're going to come up the same amount as we did our bird's mouth. We're going to come up to 3. So I'm measuring over here with a 3 on my scale. Keeping my line true. So this goes away. So this will be all we nail the fascia to, which should be, grab my tape measure. It's right in front of me. Thank you, cameraman. Yeah, so that gives me a 5 1/4 fascia. So that's less than 6. So that's plenty of something that we can mill. No problem there. All right, so that's what it's supposed to be, how it works out on paper. Let's cut this and put it in place and see if it actually jives with my dimensional lumber not being as dimensional as it should be. So we'll see how it goes. That was heavy. Okay, so clearly the thing I forgot to do is take into consideration the thickness of the ridge beam, which is a true 2 inch. So I need to cut 1 inch off of that. So obviously the other side would match. So we're gonna cut that guy down 1 inch and see if that makes a difference. All right, so we had to shave off a couple inches of the length to dial it in well. And then I actually went back and changed that seat. Where'd you go? The seat. Instead of 3 inches, I went ahead to 4 inches, so that obviously dropped it down more, because what we were having was the rafter was sticking much higher over my ridge beam. So being able to just make those fine adjustments dialed us in, and now I can use that one as a template to do all my other ones.
What will be on this side? Come on, son.
All right, so we got everything in place, got all our rafters up. You'll notice the rafters are a little bit lower than the crown of the ridge beam. And the reason why is well, by the time I put my pattern in place, it dropped down a little bit, so it's one of those design correct errors, I guess. But it actually is going to work out okay because I've got 1x3 purlins that I'm going to nail horizontally to the rafters, of course, and that's what the metal roofing will actually attach to. So by the time I flush those up, those purlins will be flush with the ridge beam, and of course we'll put a metal ridge cap on it, so that's not going to matter at all. But my purlins I milled at 12 feet long, 3 inch by 1 inch, so that'll allow me just to put, I think I'm going to do 3 on each side, and we should be good to go.
I already marked it.
That's all right.
What'd you say? In
I
what?
said the end closest to the woods would be good for me.
Never mind. Do you need both ends marked that way? Why?
Because I only need one.
Well, I can hand it to you so this one's closest to the woods.
That works. You gonna flip it? Don't hit me with it.
Same thing on the other one?
Yep. Slow me down, Clark.
Planning to be cutting more boards? Absolutely not.
You don't mind, yeah. Ready for another one when you go. Is it mark 6?
Yeah.
Once at the top, there's a mark 23 inches up on each rafter. So just try to get this face of the board lined up with that mark, just enough that I can nail it on.
You mean, okay.
Slide it up.
And so I'm trying to get the top of the board on that line?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on, because I can't even see the line.
About 23 inches up.
I don't know if that's good, but
So it doesn't have to be exact.
you said the top of those boards.
Well, okay, so we finished up, got all of our purlins in place. Kelly was a big help doing that. That's kind of tough to do one-handed or one person on that length. So you can see we got a 6-inch overhang on both sides. So we're going to actually do some fascia. So we'll do some 1 by, I don't know, maybe 1 by 4, 1 by 6. We'll just see what comes out. And fascia, and of course have our metal roof come up to the edge there. Really want to try to dress this up a little bit nicer than even what I've got on the barn. The barn's just a metal roof with no trim or anything. I'd like to have a little bit of trim elements on that. Shocking, I know. But it's funny, you know, this comes back to why you design something. If you design it, you draw it out to scale, all those measurements like I did in SketchUp, why you stick with the plan and don't deviate just because you think it might be easier. You know, I'd mentioned earlier that we may drop this center beam, this ridge beam a little bit, so it's not so high. That just seems excessive. And as you can see with how my window, since we didn't drop it at all, how my window fit perfectly, because that's how I designed it. Didn't even think about that. If I'd lowered that ridge beam even an inch, then these rafters would have interfered with my window frame, and I really wanted it to be as close to flush as possible. It's not connected, you can see here. I can move it, but it's actually, the rafters are resting right on it. So that is fortuitous that I didn't drop it. Now, I've yet to order the metal roof for this, and really the reason why is I just don't trust myself in ordering pre-cut metal roof based upon my design. It's like, I think I'd rather have it erected than actually put a tape on it, even if that means I gotta wait a couple extra days on a project. Now, I'm spent today because it's getting late in the evening, so if I had metal roofing, I wouldn't be putting it on today anyway. But I'll probably have to wait a week in ordering it and having it delivered, that type of stuff. But the reason why I wait, of course, is to get the lengths right. So we're going to do rain catchment on this, on both sides. So that's where we're going to have fascia here on the face of our rafters. Kelly's shooting at me. And then, of course, we'll have gutter. So I want to take all that in consideration. If we're going to do a 4/4 fascia, then I want to make sure that my metal roofing's long enough to drip down into the gutter, of course, and not fall short. So I'm going to measure that real quick. So it looks like about 77 inches in metal roofing length is going to work for that. So that's what we're going to go for. That takes into consider the fascia, and possibly going to put a drip edge on that just so the fascia will last a little bit longer. But we'll see. We'll see how that rubs against the budget. So the next step is to keep milling siding. I have some of it milled up already, although I'm not happy with how it's curling, but we'll detail that in a future video. The back window, probably just going to cut some plexiglass for that and kind of make it like a 2-season window. That'll do plexiglass, and then we'll also do a mesh screen or chicken wire. And that way in the wintertime, we leave the plexiglass in, of course, so there's not a lot of air coming through. But then in the summertime, we can take that plexiglass out and get a little bit more air circulation as the ladies are hanging out here laying eggs. They're not super hot. Got to work on the door, and I've got some poplar set aside that's been drying for a while that I think I'm going to build the doors out of. We'll see. Instead of just going out and trying to buy a door or taking a door and cutting it down, I'll see if I can build something for that. Well, we'll keep documenting this as we go along. Appreciate everybody watching. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think about some of the details with the siding and any comments about my layout of my rafters. I'd be curious to hear how you professional guys do that. All right, take care, everybody.